Clarity is trumping creativity in terms of marketing. Why is that? Because we're also bombarded with information and content, and we're searching things on ChatGPT, Google, all the places. We want to know exactly what we're getting from who, how, very quickly. Hello and welcome to this episode of the New School Podcast, where I'm going to talk about your website, otherwise known as your digital home. So we get so many questions on what makes a good website, how much should you be spending, and even how often you should be updating your website. So we know it can be so confusing and complicated. The goal of this episode is to make it super simple, intuitive, and clear for you. And actually, as I was creating the script for this episode, I was looking at it and I was thinking, like, is this just so simple that it's kind of ridiculous? And if it is, that means I've actually hit the nail on the head, and hopefully it's really valuable for you because it can be so confusing and it's really not that confusing. So who's this episode relevant to? It is relevant to you if you're an advisory firm, sub 500 million in AUM, all the way up to the mega RAs that are 20 billion plus with lots of advisors, because the same principles and frameworks apply. And that trajectory, those types of firms at that size in different growth stages are representative of our clients here at FICOM. So what I'm going to share with you is the consulting or guidance we give our clients who are in that range. So we want your website to drive referrals, leads. We want it to be a place that you're really proud of, that's aligned with who you are. And so I'm going to cover the essentials, but only the essentials. So if there's anything I haven't covered, there's a reason behind it. So in this episode, I'm going to cover the role of your website. And we're going to talk about the consumer buying journey and the 3-second test. I know that's why you're here. How do you 3-second test to determine if your website is going to convert? And then I'm going to go into the essential elements to a high converting website, which includes the 3 most essential pages, how to drive SEO, and recommendation on spend. And also I'll talk about mindset. So first, I'm going to cover the role of your website. So I was recently at an event and I had the opportunity to speak on stage and hold a workshop. And one of the advisors raised their hands, principal of a firm, and they asked me, it was a gentleman, he said, "Why are websites so plain these days?" And he said it with disdain. He was like, "I've seen there's this trend. They're really simple. Like, what's the deal?" And so here's the most interesting thing. If we think about kind of like the old school model of websites, so think about 5-10 years ago, like people were pumping money into the design of their websites. And I think the thought process was like, the fancier and more polished your website is, the more sophisticated you appear. And so as a result, high net worth prospects are going to want to work with you because they're going to say, wow, this is fancy. It was kind of like, this is the Ritz-Carlton Hotel or the Four Seasons. And that's how websites were being built, right? It's changed quite significantly. And so if we think about the kind of like the new school paradigm of websites, where we are is websites are indicating your degree of polish. So it's important that they are polished. And it's important that they do appeal to the type of client you serve. So if it's ultra high net worth or high net worth, you do want that degree of sophistication. But websites these days are more of a sales tool or brochure versus like a fancy place where you're meant to be impressing people. So I'll talk about that and what that looks like. So think about how much content we consume, especially on our phones on the daily. We're in a place right now where clarity is trumping creativity in terms of marketing. Why is that? Because we're also bombarded with information and content, and we're searching things on ChatGPT, Google, all the places. We want to know exactly what we're getting from who, how, very quickly. We're not impressed by creativity and trying to figure out what something is or who someone is, right? So the same is true for your website. So if we think about what is the role of your website, so we go back to the consumer buying behavior. A prospect meets you in person or they receive a referral to work with you, or maybe they stumble upon you on a podcast episode. However, they have that initial interaction, even if they've received your referral and even if they've met you in person, if they're considering working with you, what are they going to do? They're going to go online and validate you, otherwise known as, like, lightly, I call it like stalking, right? So they're going to Google you, they're going to check out your website, consume your content, maybe follow you on social media, and then they're going to decide if they want to work with you or not. So trust building is happening online, and the role of your website is in that validation process, right? So prospects want to understand, here's your 3-second rule, when they land on your website and the top of your homepage, the first place that anyone lands, in that 3 seconds, they want to know what you do, who you do it for, because they're really asking, does this person or this firm work with people like me? And they want to know the next action you want them to take. Okay, so if you have all of this in place, you will solve for any issues where you're having a low converting website, wrong fit leads, or low search ranking. So what does that look like? It means top of the fold, which is that part that's the top of your website. They want to land there and they want to see themselves. So maybe it's visually, you see a picture of them, or maybe it's a description of them, the essence of them, the psychographic. So for example, it might be, if they were appealing to me, we help, high performing career women build wealth from their jobs or something. I mean, that was terrible, but you get the vibe, right? So you want to be able, as a prospect, to self-identify very quickly. They work with people like me. I know what they do. And then you want them to know very quickly the next action you want them to take. Okay, so that would be work with us. Download a cheat sheet on ensuring that you're doing all the things you need to be doing to save. I mean, that was a long sentence, but you get the vibe. Like something that's short, sharp, edgy, cutting through the noise and getting them right into the next action, and then addressing their pain point or need. So I'll tell you what doesn't work. If you look at your homepage and you've got lots of videos in that top part, I've seen that, like lots of videos playing, or you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this as a next step, or maybe you've got slider imagery, how it like moves across the top of the homepage. It's confusing. I don't know what you want me to do because I'm like so engaged in like your videos and all the next steps. I'm just going to start scrolling down the page. What you want them to do is click into the next step and the page where they get the opportunity to self-select and book a first meeting with you. Okay. So what I talked about is like a lot of noise. In an ideal scenario, some great examples are Define Financial. So I'll link that in the show notes below. Taylor Schulte, he's phenomenal. Destiny Capital, they're another really good one. So, and then if you look at some bigger firms with a lot of advisors, they'll tell you what they do. And then they might say like, find an advisor. So an example would be Allworth Financial, okay, for a bigger firm. So I'll link that down below. But as you land there, if you get nothing else right, I want to know as a prospect that you work with people like me. So visually and description, I want to know what you do. And I want to know the next step or action you want me to take. And that should be working with you and scheduling that meeting, downloading something that might be valuable, something like that. Okay. So that's what it looks like. That's the 3-second rule. Okay. You get that right, you're on your way. Most firms do not get that right because they're so into fanciness and maybe even storytelling, which by the way, I love. All of that stuff is amazing. But really, your website is a sales tool to drive people into that first meeting. So we've just talked about what the role of your website is, the consumer buying journey, where it fits in, and the 3-second test for a high converting website. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about the essential elements to a high converting website. So that's the biggest one, that 3-second rule. But now I'm going to talk rule. And now I'm going to talk about the 3 most important pages, the most basic but overlooked way to drive SEO, and my advice on spend and when you need to update it. Okay, so the 3 most important pages are that homepage that we just talked about, specifically top of the fold. The second most important page is going to be what you would consider your work with us page, right? So if we think about your Work With Us page, this is a key asset on your website. So this is a place where you want a prospect to, again, self-select. So identify the type of people that you work with and get clear that it's them. So this might include the stage of life that they're in, pre-retirees, looking to create freedom and possibility. That might talk into their psychographic and vision, 2 million in investable assets, right? So you can put that there so people can be like, oh, I don't fit that. I'm 500 million. Or they might say, I'm much bigger. It seems like they work with smaller firms, okay? The key here is to be hyper-focused. I know you want the $20 billion client or $20 million client, whatever that looks like, right? I know you want them, but you have to be really honest and clear. You will get those people, but who are the most viable, targeted people or an audience that you can serve to achieve all your business goals where you can be in your zone of excellence? That's really who you want to serve, right? So you want your prospect to be able to self-select. You want them to understand your value proposition. So what change would you create for them? So if you're pre-retirement, you're contemplating what to do with your company stock options, we can support you in creating possibility and living into more of your passions for the second stage of life. That might be, you want to have like just really succinctly what you change for them, what possibilities you create for them, and what shifts in working with you, and what wouldn't happen if they didn't work with you. Then you want a prospect to understand what will happen next. So if they put their email in or they schedule and you have a calendar pop up, what is going to happen in meeting one? And so we think about removing any friction to them scheduling the meeting. And how do they remove that friction? First of all, they're understanding who you work with, they're understanding the value that you give them, but they also want to know what's going to happen in that first meeting. Because if you can outline that, you're reducing uncertainty, and reducing uncertainty makes them feel more confident in moving forward. Okay, so I'll tell you a short story. I was looking for a new gym. This is like a parallel. I think health and fitness is always such a good parallel to what we do in wealth management. So I was looking at all these gyms, filling in their forms. And this one gym looked really interesting. I liked the trainer. He was like very healthy, holistic, all the things. And so I signed up, and then he immediately had this automated text sequence that came to me. And I'm like, I dig this because like I'm into texting. That's how I like to communicate. But his was like, why do you want to join our gym? And I was like, because I'm looking for a healthy environment. I love to work out. I want to do some weight training. No, but Candace, why? What is your why? To be healthy. No, but what is your why? Like for me, I'm very into personal development, even some kind of woo-woo stuff. But I don't want to be pressured by a stranger I haven't met via text to go deeper into like self-discovery via text. So all of a sudden I was clear, I opted out. That's not for me, okay? That may be for you, but that was an example of a prospect experience where I self-selected out. That was an indicator or representation of the experience that I would have with them. And I was like, it's not my vibe. Something, for someone else that would be totally their vibe. But I kind of started to understand what to expect. So you want to meet your prospects where they are. You want to communicate the key things that they may want to know to reduce uncertainty and to move confidently in meeting with you. So we've got a place where you've outlined who your ideal client is. Your prospects can self-select. You've got a space on that Work With Us page where they can understand your value proposition, what change you would create for them. You want to outline what to expect in the meeting one. And what we always recommend is you have a hyper-specific meeting one. So maybe you're saying like, it will do an evaluation of your restricted stock, schedule a meeting, and then we'll send you some questions to answer, or a checklist or a resource. You want to make a high value meeting one. If it's just we're going to do discovery or we're going to get to know each other, it's less compelling to take that step. What you want to do is create some kind of hyper-specific meeting one where you're addressing a pain point, you're adding value, and one that's in a way that's specific to the type of client that you love to serve. So if you know stock options are a big issue for them, or taxes are an issue, or if you're a pre-divorcee couples or a man or woman, maybe there's some pain point. You want to address that in meeting one and provide a valuable resource. It's going to give you an opportunity to add value, get to know them, and connect quite quickly in meeting one. So we always recommend that. Then you want to answer any FAQ. So have an FAQ section, and maybe even you have your testimonials or your client reviews pop up. So again, you're validating that you work with people like them, right? Get them the ability to schedule that meeting, receive that high value asset, checklist, video, whatever it is to set them up for meeting one. And then at the bottom of your page, you say, not ready to work with us? Don't worry, sign up for our monthly communications. We talk about retirement issues that are related to people like you, or saving issues, or pre-divorce, things that you should be doing, whatever it looks like, right? So you want that page is essentially your kind of website, if you think about it. So your homepage is that quick hit. You work with people like me. I know what you do, and I know what step you want me to take. Then I go to your Work With Us page, and I see myself. I see your value proposition, the change that you'll create for me. I understand what to expect in meeting one. There's some kind of high value resource, really specificity. I have my FAQs answered, and hey, I get to see some testimonials or reviews from people like me. And maybe if I'm not ready to have that meeting, I can still put in my email and build trust with you. That is the gold standard for a website, except for there's one more page that's really important, okay? So you've got your homepage, you've got your Work With Us page, whatever you call that page, and we're going to talk about your about page, right? So meet the team, about us, whatever that looks like. You want people to understand who you are and get to know you a little bit. So as they land on that homepage, they're really looking, is this a viable firm? Do they work with people like me? What step do they want me to take? But now if they're starting to even if you think about maybe they sign up for that meeting and now they're like, oof, I better get to know who I'm actually going to meet with, or maybe they've done that before they've gone to the Work With Us page. You want your About Us page to reflect who you are as humans. So absolutely have your credentials, have your education, have your prior work experience. All of that's important, but then also introduce yourself as a human. And I think she does a phenomenal job. It's one of our previous clients. If you look up Capital Group Private Client Services, all of their advisors, you even look at their YouTube, they've got, I think, 42, I don't know what the number is now, private wealth advisors, very sophisticated advisors, working with ultra high net worth. They all have the same job. They work for the same company. But if you click into their bios and their videos, all of them has a completely different story, and you get to know them as humans. So if I'm a prospect, I can self-select what type of advisor I potentially would want to look like. If it's like a bigger firm, that's an example. Same for Allworth Financial. They've got a segment of advisors, really personalized bios and videos. If you're a smaller firm, what a key opportunity to do that. So in an ideal scenario, you've got your credentials, you've got some humanness around why you do what you do, who you do it for, your passions, your interests. And then in an ideal scenario, you have an intro video. So each advisor or client-facing person is able to create a video so that a potential prospect really gets to know you as a human and gets the vibe of, yes, this is someone I can trust. This is someone I will vibe with. So we're talking about the essential elements to a high converting website. So far, I've covered the 3-second rule, your homepage. We're talking about the 3 most important pages, your homepage, your Work With Us page, your About Us pages. Spend all your time there, get that really clear. Now, the next part I'm going to talk about is the most basic but often overlooked way to drive SEO. So we have prospects come in all the time. They're like, we got to drive SEO, we got to drive SEO. So what is SEO? Basically, if we were to go to Google search and now ChatGPT, or if we did a YouTube search and we search for an advisor in our area or with a specific specialty, you want to show up on those search results. So how do you do that? SEO is really not that complicated, although they change the search algorithms quite consistently. There are a few things that you can do to essentially be pretty diligent and disciplined. And so the most basic thing is, one, all the content on your website speaks specifically to your target client on every single page. So for example, if you work with engineers, that would be at the top of your homepage. That would be on your Work With Us page. And even our About Us page, you'd say, we love working with engineers because right? Then, so every single page needs to be hyper specific. You might even say, we work with engineering executives, have a lot of restricted company stock, and are trying to figure out what they need to do 10 years out from retirement. Hyper specific, beautiful. It might even be engineering executives who have restricted stock that are based in Connecticut and want a local firm, right? Every single page you want to speak to your target client and have those words pop up. A second thing that you want to do is create regular content that speaks specifically to the pain points, dreams, and aspirations of your target client. It's not magic. If you're talking about restricted stock for engineers in Connecticut and your bi-monthly blogs and your video content is hyper specific and targeted for that, you're going to be rewarded in the SEO. It's not about just slapping a bunch of keywords everywhere consistently, although part of that helps. What the algorithms are rewarding more and more is hyper specific, focused content that's regularly posted. And the way that you can think about that is it's like having a conversation with Google. And so Google, you're saying to Google, hey, Google, we work with engineering executives. We know they have these problems. This month, we're going to cover this. Next month, we're going to cover this. You have to be in consistent conversation with Google, ChatGPT. How do you do that? By consistently updating your website with that hyper specific content. Okay. There's no magic here for SEO. It's not like you get an SEO expert and all of a sudden you're top of the search results. Getting an SEO expert can be helpful, but you need to be posting hyper specific, regular content to feed the algorithm or essentially be in conversation with them. So the last part of this conversation that I'm having with you right now is my advice on spend, when to update your website, and really a mindset for your website. So hopefully you've been able to follow along and it's been really clear and simple. And maybe you're like, but what about this? What about this? If I haven't talked about it, it's potentially like, just forget about it. It's not that essential. Like these are the essential elements, kind of like when you're working out, eat whole foods, move daily, sleep, drink a lot of water. Okay. So that's kind of the equivalent here. You don't have to worry too much about some of the nitty-gritty details. So when it comes to your website, you don't have to spend a fortune. Redoing your website, building a whole new one, it's time consuming, it's emotionally consuming because you want everything to get it right, and it can be exhausting, but you want it to reflect who you are. So when you're thinking and contemplating about spend, I would say think about these pages that we've talked about. Think about the role of a website as being that sales brochure and tool, and then just be really honest about what feels like a good spend. If you're a smaller firm, an FMG website, a Snappy Kraken website, very good enough. You don't need to spend more than that. You can spend your time on really beautiful copywriting that speaks specifically to your target client, on your brand or creative concept design that they can use to build your website. And you're going to have a high converting website if you do those things and you follow the guidance that I've outlined in this episode. If you're a bigger firm and you're like, we want to up our game, your website should be reflective of the client experience that you give for clients. So think about them coming into your office. What does that look like? What's the experience that they're getting from you? Your website should look like that. So I would say about a good average spend if you want to invest is about $50,000. I would say about $50,000 includes design, copywriting, development. I've seen firms spend more because they're like, if it doesn't cost more, then we feel like it's not as valuable. You can do that. I wouldn't recommend that. You don't need to unless you're like, we feel passionate about it. Okay. But you don't need to. So I guess what I'm saying here is like, you don't have to spend a fortune on your website to have a high converting website. It just has to be focused, targeted, and have the essential elements outlined in this episode of the pages, right? And then the other thing I would say is, how often do you have to update your website? I would say I would look at it every year and I would say, does this still reflect who we are? Does this still reflect what we do? And does this still reflect our target client? You can usually elevate a website with imagery and copy updates without having to have a full rebuild. If you're having technical issues, if it really no longer reflects you as a firm, you've changed names or partners, or you've gone up market, that could be a good reason to redo your website. But usually you can just refresh it and you can get what you need without that big commitment in investment and time. I would spend your money and your time on ongoing content feeding the algorithm, some client micro events to drive referrals, and your client communications to drive referrals versus your website. So your website, keep it fresh, keep it targeted, keep it beautiful. I hope this episode was wildly valuable for you. If you want to hear about how other firms are driving organic growth, you can check out our Growth Leaders of Wealth Management podcast hosted by our CEO, Meg Carpenter. This podcast is all about me guiding you step by step, episode through how you can drive organic growth, sharing with you the guidance and frameworks we use with our clients. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, write a review. We are wildly appreciative of your time.